Bailey here. You know that feeling when you finally get around to using that filament you bought ages ago, only for the filament to completely fail? I've been keeping some Hatchbox PLA filament since 2019, and I want to see if they are still usable, or has time turned it into a useless spool of plastic despite being stored in optimal conditions and surrounded by desiccant packages. Stick around to find out if this old filament is worth keeping or trying to print with. Opening my storage box and taking a look at my first Hatchbox spool, it is a glow-in-the-dark spool that is green with about 30% left. Let's try and pull some of the filament so I can take a look at it. As I examine the filament and start to try and slightly bend it, it instantly breaks. It is extremely brittle and just snaps off, making this spool unusable. The next spool is a clear Hatchbox filament. I removed the label as it was peeling off. I used this filament to make some transparent objects. It has about 60% left on the spool. Let's see what happens when we pull some out and try to bend it. It looks like this filament is even more brittle than the first spool. You can just see the pieces in my hand that have snapped off. This is another unusable spool. My last and favorite Hatchbox spool is a black glitter filament. Let's see how this last spool does. I use this to make several travel cases for some of my electronics. This one is hard to get a hold of the end piece. It seems at first like this spool might work, however, as I start to bend it, when a little pressure it starts snapping. I try in a few spots, but it keeps breaking and also seems brittle. I really don't think it will hold up to printing. I really tried to get this one to work, but I think it is another unusable spool. Now we will look at other spools that I purchased around the same time as the Hatchbox ones before. These are different brands, but they are all PLA filament. Let's check them out. This first one is a matte purple PolyTerra PLA. I really want to see if I can bend it and to see if it is brittle in any way. When I bend several parts of the filament, it isn't breaking at all. It seems fine and usable. It doesn't seem brittle or bad in any way. Next is a green MatterHackers PLA spool that looks to be almost full. It looks like it has no issues as I get it out of its bag. Let's see if I can bend or put pressure on it and make it break. When I pull and twist it, the filament doesn't break. It doesn't seem to be brittle, nor does it break at any point. For this last spool, I have a silk brown or copper-colored filament. It is taking me a bit to get a hold of the end of the filament. I bend and pull on the filament, but it does not break. It also appears to be fine too. It's not brittle and has no problems bending. There is no breakage. All these spools were other brands and were all bought at the same time and stored in the same dry container as the Hatchbox filaments. I also used a ton of desiccant packages to try and prevent any moisture from ruining these filaments to begin with, as you can see here. Instead of throwing them away, I tried several methods to make these Hatchbox spools usable again. My first method was to try and dry them using a technique I have seen on YouTube since I don't have a filament dryer. I placed the spool on my heated bed under a box for several hours to try and dry it out. I tried this method using different temps for different periods of time. This did not work. Next, I tried using a smaller heat gun, and I would gently heat this spool over and over for a long period. This would work for a few minutes before the filament became brittle again. I could load it into the printer and start printing, but it would quickly fail. I also tried this for different periods and in different ways, but it didn't work either. My next method was probably one that most people would not try. I would take a small portion of filament and soak it in water to see if it became less brittle. This would work for a few minutes, but it would quickly become brittle and start breaking again. Not to mention, it affected the final print quality. The Hatchbox filaments are all so brittle I can't even load it into the out-of-filament sensor. It just keeps breaking apart. Even if I get it loaded into the sensor, it will just break again as it starts printing. This happens with all three old Hatchbox filament spools. Here you can see just how brittle the filament is. Despite my best efforts, these old Hatchbox spools are really unusable and just need to be disposed of. I have come to a couple of conclusions. The first one is that I don't need to keep filament around for years and not use it. The risk of wasting money if it becomes unusable is just too great. The other conclusion is that for now I will just stick to other brands of filament. The other brands I have work fine after all this time. and I am less concerned that they will become brittle and unusable. It is possible that Hatchbox no longer has this issue, but for now it is not worth the risk, especially since there are so many other options that seem better and are cheaper. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Also, tell me what else I should have tried, or if anyone had these issues too. Thanks, and more videos to come.